Hi, and welcome back to the Manager to Leader Shift program. My special guest for this spotlight session is Michelle Crawford. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thanks AJ for having me. I appreciate it.
So Michelle and I are no strangers to each other. We actually collaborate and do a lot of work together, particularly around the Thrive Stars initiative, looking at how we can improve the productivity, the well-being, the thriving of organizations around this beautiful country that we live in. And specifically today, I've invited Michelle on as our spotlight guest to talk a bit about self-worth. And how do we actually master self-worth? It's not necessarily about being cocky, but it's about having that self-assured confidence that's so critical to leaders so that they can then form connections with their people, they can inspire and influence others, and they can shape and guide an organization. So when you think about self-worth mastery, Michelle, what do you think that means? And what does it mean for you?
I think that self-worth mastery, it's interesting because some people think that other people just inherently have good levels of self-worth. But I don't believe that that's how it works. My belief is that when we're all born, we already have some kind of genetic predisposition to how we're going to think about ourselves. And more importantly, the influence of our families and our friends and our immediate others reinforces our self-worth or it changes our self-worth. And I think what's really interesting when I'm coaching clients, I rarely find someone who has deeply well-developed self-worth.
Wow,
It's
that's
rare to
fascinating.
find someone with self-worth mastery. Very
Wow.
rare.
That's a big call. So Michelle is the founder of a company called Being More Human. And so she coaches leaders, CEOs, and people all the time. And interestingly, because you do often coach the leader or founder of an organization or the CEO, don't you? So you're working with senior teams and you find that not many have self-worth mastery.
Well, what I find is many people attach their self-worth to their most recent achievement.
Ah,
So they've created a great organizational strategy for this business, therefore they're worthy. Their
right.
company made X amount of millions last year, therefore they're worthy. They're a good father, therefore they're worthy. So
Right.
people to attach their worthiness to an event or to an achievement, and that is absolutely not how self-worth works.
Yeah. So rather than fundamentally believing that I am who I am and therefore I am worthy, regardless of the actions I take. So, how do we go about developing? What would you coach someone on in order to get to a place where they do feel worthy, regardless of those latest achievements?
I think that um, just a sec, I've just got to hang up a call. You'll have to edit that bit. I think that the process of reflecting and getting to the stage where you understand that you do not have self-worth mastery is the first place to start. It's
Mm-hmm.
like we all have to have that existential crisis to realize that we feel like we're not worthy. So I
Mm.
believe that every person on the planet at some point in their lives feels as though they're not worthy, and that
Right.
you need to get to that point of feeling your unworthiness in order to then be able to move forward and develop your worthiness.
Right. Which is why so much of the psychologists' rooms everywhere around the world, right, would be filled with people who are going, I'm not good enough.
Exactly. That's exactly
Mm,
right. And if you get to the core of the onion, like people go to psychologists for all different reasons, right? It might be relationship stuff, career stuff, it might be grief. All of those things are just layers on the onion. And the core to the onion is 100% with every person, always a self-worth core.
right. So it's super critical to have it as a foundation, then, I guess.
It absolutely is. So I think some of
Mm.
the ways of learning to develop it is how the tools that we use are tools where you can actually measure that. So you can see in color, in blue, red, and green, exactly what you think about yourself. And then you can see in blue, red, and green exactly what 5 other people think about you. So what you're doing is you're putting your self-worth beside an other person's version of your worth. And in that process, you very often find that other people believe that you are more worthy than what you do.
Right. So I'm curious, if someone doesn't have great self-worth and they haven't yet mastered that, and they were climbing the ranks of leadership, be it in a government organization or a company, private company, what kind of cracks could show up as they move up the ranks of leadership if they haven't worked on addressing, as you say, more into the blue area, more understanding
I think it's fair to say the cracks would show everywhere. So there would be cracks around confidence. So there'd be lower levels of confidence, second guess their decision making, not feeling like they can position things at the board level if they want to create that level of strategic change. There would be issues around their decision making because they wouldn't be in a position where they had a high level of belief in whatever the decision was that they were making.
Yeah.
They could, not always, but they could be very micromanaging and focused on power and control of other people more than where they should be. Or the other possibility is they could be more passive. So they could be setting back and being quite dependent on others and not taking the level of personal accountability, because personal accountability is the antidote to learn how to develop your self-worth.
Right. Yeah. So that personal accountability is one of the muscles to flex to start to build the self-worth.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, what do you see as some of the outcomes and the positive things that start happening when a leader or someone who aspires to be a leader starts building that?
So that's what we would call very high in self-actualizing as a leader. So if you are very high in self-actualizing, you are a master of self-worth. And you would notice things like the leader would be very inspiring. They would be very curious. They would be very motivating to other people. They are non-judgmental. They are very accepting of people around them. And they believe that people are trying to do their best when they come to work every day. You would have a very, very positive company culture with very good financial returns if you have a leader that is high in self-actualizing or self-worth.
And I guess I've heard you mention before that there is actually a correlation between the financial success and the stability of an organization long-term when the CEO or leader has this sense of self-actualized self-worth.
Yes, exactly. So what I would say, simply put, is that the higher your self-worth, the more successful your company.
Yeah. So can it go too high? Could
Yeah,
someone have
because
too
you can
much
get
self-worth?
narcissistic leaders,
Right.
So you can have too much, but I wouldn't call that self-worth. I think narcissism is I don't think you can have too much self-worth, because self-worth is like the positive interpretation of ego, right?
Yes.
Whereas narcissism is like the negative interpretation of ego. So that's the downside. If people are selfish and they're self-consumed and they're only ever thinking about themselves and not other people around them, that's when it becomes too much. But it's not the same thing. It's a different thing.
Yeah, because that's not self-worth, that's self-centeredness then.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I know in the blue style you're talking about, there are other things like humanistic encouraging and how they work, lead and coach others, isn't it? So that balance of that means that their lens is also on how do they build up the self-worth of others in a way.
Yeah. And highly self-actualizing leaders fully understand that in order for them to have a big impact across their company or across the globe, if their work goes across the globe, they have to be the best version of themselves with the highest level of integrity and the highest feeling of self-worth. So they will go out of their way to try and eliminate all those self-limiting beliefs that they have that are stopping them from having good self-worth.
Yeah, fantastic. And so would you have any tips for people to where to start if they think, I have got a bit of self-doubt, and maybe they're not backing themselves as well as they could, you know, second guessing everything? What would you say for someone to begin on the journey if they're already a leader and they know this is an area I'm going to have to build up a bit?
I think one of the biggest tips for people in self-actualizing leadership is learning that you are the one who owns your emotions, and everybody else are the people that own their emotions. So I might be working very closely with you and I might be your leader. However, I'm not responsible for your emotions. You're a big girl and you can take care of yourself. So my responsibility is to be a decent human and to be a great leader, but not to be second and third and fourth guessing what I'm going to say and how is that going to come across to AJ and will she be offended, right? If you put your energy and your time into thinking that about other people, you won't make any decision anywhere. So first of all, it's about understanding that as an adult, you own your emotions and other people own theirs and operate in that way. So don't be responsible for other people's emotions. Be responsible for your own.
I love that. I think that's super simple and clean in just starting to identify also where am I maybe not doing that well, starting to hear, am I waiting for permissions or am I, overriding others and not considering them? But that whole aspect of emotion, and quite often it's not talked about in the workplace, and yet it's who we are and our very humanness, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. So thank you for all your tips and ideas. It's been great to get your input into this topic of how we build our confidence through self-worth.
Awesome. And good luck to all you leaders who are going through the process of self-worth mastery. It is a fascinating process. It can be fantastic. It can be difficult, and it is 1000% worthwhile.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
Pleasure.